Hey guys, what is up? Super K-Man Rocks here, and it is time. It is LPL 2025 Winter Split Finals time. It's the overview and analysis for all of the games of the Winter Split Finals. Of course, by the end of this video, we're going to know the team that has won the LPL, that is the champions of the Winter Split, and will be representing the LPL at the First Stand International Tournament, the first big international of the year. We're definitely going to learn a lot about the two teams. I'm very interested to see where they go because these two teams have been on pretty different trajectories so far this year, but I hope you're excited. I know I am. If you are, let me know down in the comments section below. What did you expect to happen in this series? Did things go as you anticipated, or were you surprised by the outcome in either a positive or negative way? I'm always curious to hear your thoughts and opinions. Of course, if you want to know my thoughts on everything that's happened in the LPL up until this point, we've made a video on every single series, every single game in the LPL in 2025 so far. It's going to be linked up in the iCard, the playlist that is, if you want to check it out. But today, we're going to be going over the finals. It's all over up until that point. The only thing left to do is to cover one more best of five. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you are new here, what we are going to do is go game by game in the finals, talking about the advantages and the disadvantages that each team was able to generate. I'll be giving a player of the game and a dud of the game for each individual game that we cover, and at the end of the series, I will be giving a player of the series, a finals MVP, if you will, to tie everything into a nice, neat little bow. We will be taking a look a little bit at the First Stand tournament at the end of this video. Basically, every single team has qualified up until this point, so we will be kind of talking about how I think the winner of this series will do internationally, but it's the LPL. You know they're at the very least going to be competitive against every other team. It's just really about whether or not they are going to be favorites going into the tournament. So very interested to talk about that, but that's all for the end of the video. Most of this video will, of course, be covering the finals, and that starts right about now. I don't want to waste you guys' time too much at the beginning, so let's get into the actual content. I'm very, very interested in this matchup because it's not the first nor even the second time we've seen these two face off in a big series so far this year. It's the number 1 seed from Group A in Anyone's Legend taking on the number 2 seed from Group A in Top Esports. Somehow, some way, in a league with 4 groups and 16 teams, the 2 teams in the finals both come from the same group, that of course being Group A. AL still undefeated so far in 2025. Not only did they win Demacia Cup, they went through that entire tournament not dropping a single best of series, but they go undefeated in the group stage, being able to take down Top Esports in a best of 5, and so far so good in terms of the winners bracket for AL in the playoffs. They beat Ninjas in Pajamas in their round number 2 matchup, their winners bracket matchup, and of course they beat JD Gaming in the winners finals in order to get to this spot. This team has looked absolutely unstoppable so far in 2025, and it's for a variety of different reasons. Obviously, the first name that's going to jump out to a lot of people is Tarzan in the jungle. This guy is consistently in the finals over and over again. He was in the finals last year with Weibo Gaming, the one split that he actually played in summer, and of course he made the finals the previous summer, the last time he was playing on LNG, and so this is the 3rd time in a row that he's played a split in the LPL and made the finals. We'll see if he can actually get it done. He finished 2nd place both times last time. We'll see if he can actually get over the hump and win the finals this time. But this is the best chance he's had in quite a while, in my opinion. This is the best team he has played for in terms of the performances that have been put out, and he is the leader. He is the best player, the star player on this team, the one kind of pushing them forward and elevating them to this level, because obviously this team was full of good players last year, but they didn't have a jungler that could really elevate that. Tarzan really has been that guy on everything, specifically the early game carries, but we know that Tarzan can do basically anything in not only this meta, but in any meta, on any map. He's just a phenomenal player, and maybe one of the top 2 to 3 players in the LPL and in the world at the current moment. He might be the number 1 jungler in the world in terms of performances. He really has been that good, but it's not just been him. Flandre has probably been the best top laner in the LPL so far in 2025, and what a reversal that is from the last year or so for him. He really struggled on JDG last year, with the exception of a couple of series that you can handpick here or there. It wasn't exactly a good time, and he was part of the reason why that team ended up missing the World Championships, and that's really not a great thing to say about a team with Ruler and Kanavi and, missing, and a lot of these high-profile players, even Yagao, right? All these players that really expected to not only be at Worlds, but that was like the bare minimum. They were looking to win Worlds, and, to miss out on it in large part due to the fact that he was really bad on the top side is not ideal. but he has been excellent so far in 2025. The form has completely turned around coming over to this team. I think playing with Tarzan as a top laner is just a much easier job than it is for a lot of other, situations. And so Flandre definitely has made the most of it. We'll talk about his matchup in a moment because I think it's very, very fun to talk about the top lane matchup. But the other big piece for AL has been Hope and Kale on the bot side. They have been unbelievable to start this year. Kale has always been a player that I've pounded the table for. I'm not super shocked that he's performing like one of the best supports in the world. I think I've kind of been talking about him as if he just was over the past 2 or 3 years, and it's nice to see that that has come to fruition with the right talent around him. But Hope has really stepped up and been honestly like the #1 option, especially for late game carry situations for AL over the past year, and I just didn't expect that. That's not really something I anticipated. I didn't have Hope breaking out in 2025 on my bingo card. That is definitely the case, but he has been really, really good so far this year. When Shanks is the last person I'm talking about and he's in good form, he's playing like the good version of Shanks, the early season version of Shanks, and he's the last person I'm referencing on AL, that's how you know the team is in incredible form right now. And honestly, like, there has been no reason to believe that this team can lose a series yet, because they've not even really been up against the wall. I mean, game number 5 against JDG was a real thing. They did go to all 5 games against that team, but they were better in that series, and I thought it was pretty clear that they were better. So they're definitely favorites, if small ones, going into this series, because they're going up against Top Esports, who are also one of the best teams in the world and certainly have leveled up throughout the year so far. You can again point to almost anybody on the team and talk about them in a positive way. The #1 player that kind of stands out to me in terms of how they've played so far this year is actually Cream in the mid lane. He has been so influential and so important towards their success in 2025 in particular. He's had a fantastic start to the year, and honestly, I've just been kind of on the Cream bandwagon for a very long time. He was actually the first channel darling for those of you who have been around since 2022 or like end of 2021. He was the first player that I was really shouting out when he was almost a rookie on OMG. I think it was year 2 on OMG. It was the year he became Cream from Crime, like the year he name swapped over to Cream. That was the year I was really pounding the table being like, this guy's way better than he gets credit for. He's kind of the future of the LPL, and you know what? He's turned into exactly that, and a big reason for that is how versatile he has been over the past year or so. Last year was the marksman meta. A lot of people were calling him a Tristana one-trick, and he obviously proved that he is not that. Before that, people were calling him an Akali one-trick, and before that, people were calling him a Sylas one-trick. You can only be a one-trick for so many different champions before that narrative just starts to fall flat on its face. You can't be an Ahri one-trick, a Sylas one-trick, an Akali one-trick, a Tristana one-trick, and a Zero one-trick. You can't be all of those things. Cream is just a very good player in the mid lane that does not get the credit he deserves, and he's been the best player on this team, in my opinion, so far in 2025, but it's been compounding with everything. Kanavi looks excellent right now in the jungle. His playoff form is, probably the best we've seen from him so far this year. His group stage was good, but it wasn't exceptional. Tarzan actually out-jungled him in that series in the regular season. That was a big reason why Top Esports ended up losing, and so you hope that Kanavi can keep this good playoff form going rather than what we saw from him in the actual group stage. But one of the big matchups I'm really looking out for is, we talked about how well Flandre has been playing. 369 has been incredible in this playoff run. He has absolutely been decimating games, and this is probably these are probably the 2 hottest top laners in the entire league right now. I think that that's a very fair statement to make. Both Flandre and 369 are playing excellently, and I'm really excited to see who ends up getting the better of that top lane matchup, because I really do think that could determine a lot of the series. Same thing with the mid lane matchup. Jackie Love and Crisp are very good. Hope and Kale are also very good. Neither have necessarily been facilitators on their own. Kale can sometimes be that. Crisp is obviously a very prolific playmaker that can sometimes get himself into trouble, but both have kind of been extensions of the rest of the team so far in 2025. I more so expect that to be the case in this series, where a lot of the tempo and a lot of how this series goes is determined by the top side of the map, and the bot lane is going to be there to clean up a lot of the creation that the rest of the team ends up doing. Jackie Love is obviously really excellent against JD Gaming in the semifinals, but like I said, Hope was also really good. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited for this finals. I really do believe these are clearly the 2 best teams in the LPL at the current moment. I don't even think there's really all that much debate in that regard. They have definitely proven that they deserve to be considered #1 and #2, and we're definitely going to know who's #1 by the end of this series. It's definitely going to show us a lot. Only one team is going to be able to walk out of this series as champions, but who's it going to be? Well, the only way to know is to go game by game, and that means starting with game #1. So let's get right into it. The winner of game #1 was Top Esports, they are going to take game number 1. They're going to go up 1-0 in this series, and this is the exact kind of start that you are looking for. Top Esports has struggled to be able to take down AL really at any point throughout this year. To be able to show up in game number 1 and not only be the better team, but be the better team in a situation where you probably should not have been the better team from a draft perspective, it's a really, really important showcase, I think, of what this team is capable of doing at their best. For AL, I like their draft. I think that they're in a position where they should have more options the later this game goes because their engage is so consistent. I get you're looking at things like Nidalee and Jhin and you're saying maybe they're not going to be perfect in the team fight stage of the game, but so much setup for this Jhin to be able to take over fights. It really doesn't behoove Top Esports to go very late in this game when you're playing around Jace and Ahri and Misfortune and even Vi to a lesser extent. Like, I think AL should have won this game from the position that they were in. They just couldn't quite win the fights that actually mattered. The game ended up slowing down a little bit more than maybe they would have wanted, and the game ended up ending, obviously, against their favor. There were a couple of players that I think needed to play better in this game and just didn't, and obviously we'll see how that adapts throughout the rest of the series, but quickly, again, talking about the draft, when you look at the two ideologies, I think AL gets better as you continue to go along just because of the ease of engage on their side. Wukong is very easy to execute on. Leona is very easy to execute on in these late game team fights. It's just a free way onto a lot of the damage dealers, especially when you're looking at things like Misfortune being so important towards late game, damage for Top Esports. Leona ult can stop her ult immediately. Wukong getting on top of her is a disaster for her. Yone can, ult her out of her own ultimate. Like, there are so many things that can dissuade a Misfortune from just stopping and bullet timing. It's very difficult to actually play MF in this game, and that's why I'm going to give JackeyLove so much credit, because I think he played really well, but AL needed to execute a lot better. This Misfortune was way more relevant than she had any right to be throughout the entirety of this game, and a lot of that is just the fault of the players on AL whose job it was to shut down that champion. It just didn't end up happening. For Top Esports, I don't even really love this draft. It definitely has an identity because you are just playing to win a lot of these skirmishes in the mid game. Vi, Ahri is already almost entirely indexing the middle of the map into moving around early, trying to be a big playmaker and playing for Void Grubs or playing for early Dragons or playing for Otacon, that kind of stuff, playing for these small skirmishes, playing for these picks. That's what Vi, Ahri always wants to do, but then you had Jace, you had Misfortune, you have all of these champions that don't scale particularly well. You really are indexing and needing to win a lot of these skirmishes, and they did win a lot of these skirmishes. I am giving them credit in that regard, but this should have been a comp that was punished a lot more by AL, in my opinion. I really do think there were a lot of flaws, a lot of holes in terms of what Top Esports ended up drafting that I just don't think were punished in the way that maybe they should have been. But a lot of that is on Top Esports just playing really well. Going deathless on Misfortune this game is an absolute Christmas miracle. JackeyLove is going to get player of the game. He played phenomenal here. I already told you, like, this is a hard game for MF. There are so many ways to stop her damage from coming through, because really at the end of this game, she is just an ult bot. It is very difficult to do a lot on Misfortune outside of the bullet time, and the setup is not exactly there. Like, you have a ton of poke for Top Esports if you're able to control these areas, control the Baron Pit as the game goes later, control Dragon Pit as we start to get further along into these games. Not that Dragon was particularly relevant here, but there's a lot of siege, a lot of poke coming down from Top Esports, and part of that is the Misfortune ult, but the problem with that is, again, if any of the engage, and there's a lot of it, on AL end up landing on the MF, you probably aren't going to be able to win a lot of these fights. JackeyLove was just positioned so perfectly. He was so patient with a lot of his ultimates. The rest of the team played around him so well, gave him exactly the amount of peel that he needed in order to survive a lot of these fights, and he still was by far the most useful player in the game, and again, specifically in this draft, that really is an accomplishment. I do want to give a lot of credit to the peel. Kanavi and Crisp, I thought, played really well in this game. Kanavi had an excellent game on the Vi, really just out-jungled Tarzan, who was really good for AL, one of the better players for AL in this game, but only so much you can do the later this game goes on the Nidalee. It ends in 37 minutes. Like, if you're Nidalee at 35 minutes and you're trying to be useful in a team fight, like, good luck. The enemy team has better poke than you, and you are the only person on the team that can't really participate in these 5v5s. It's essentially a 4v5 the later this game goes, and Kanavi very much took advantage of that. I thought he had a really great game. Cream was everywhere on the map, did a really good job of actually pressuring in the mid game what he's supposed to do on this Ahri. He is so adept at understanding exactly where he needs to be on the map at any given time. I would argue that is his best trait as a player. His mechanics are incredible, but his map awareness is truly exceptional, and it's gotten even better over the course of the last year. 369 was really good on the top side, was definitely the better top laner. I already talked about Chris being good. This was just a good, well-executed game from Top Esports. I don't necessarily think they were set up for success. I think this is a very risky draft, but luckily for them, it ended up paying off. And then for AL on the other side, Just not a well-executed game in game number 1. I really do think you just needed to play a little bit slower, and I know that feels weird because you have Nidalee and you're Tarzan, and generally speaking, you're looking at things like Yone who want to try to get ahead. You're looking at something like Leona who has a lot of power in the early game, but there's really not a lot of damage on the other side of this matchup for top esports, and your engage is so consistent throughout the back half of this game. If you were just able to execute front to back, I actually do think that you're in a better spot, but that just was not the case for AL in this one. Flandre is going to get my dead of the game. The Wukong was simply too relevant, specifically because it was an R5 pick, to just be as useless as it was throughout a majority of this game. I think you could realistically give this to Shanks in the mid lane, who played one of his weaker games of the entire split. I don't think Kale was particularly good on the Leona throughout a lot of this, although a lot of the deaths are superfluous. Hope was doing as much as he could, but it takes a lot of time for Jhin to be able to break through a lot of this front line. Oh, also, I want to say, Misfortune is also not particularly good into Jhin. I don't really understand why the Misfortune was the pick here in the first place. I know Kai'Sa was banned, but something along that lines, like you yourself banned the Kai'Sa, you yourself banned both Varus and Corki. I'm just not a huge fan of the MF in this draft. The Jhin was in a good position to be able to try and take over, and it didn't matter. Tarzan was active, but the rest of his team was losing, and so there wasn't much that he could do. This game just became a little bit out of control, and by the time their comp was supposed to be a bit better, they were too far behind, and that's just kind of the perils of a game number 1, but at the end of the day, it is just a game number 1. Fearless is in anyone's Legends' favor, or at least it has been over the course of the last few series. They've shown a big propensity to have gigantic champion pools, and so I imagine they are going to look good in this bounce back in game number 2, but they need to. Going down 0-2 in the finals to top esports, having to win 3 games in a row, it's just a tall task. It's when you don't want to have to give yourself. You want to be able to go into this game number 3 playing it like a best of 3. So a must-win game in my opinion for AL, but if top esports is able to take this second game and take that 2-0 lead, it's absolutely massive. Are they going to be able to do that, or will AL be able to tie things up after 2? Well, the winner of game number 2 was Anyone's Legend. They are going to take game number 2. They're going to tie up this series at 1 apiece, and they needed this game. Obviously, blue side is a pretty big advantage to have in this series. Top Esports was able to get blue side for game number 1, which really did help them out, but game number 2 evens things out. AL ends up being able to pick up the win, and quite frankly, this game was not close. This was not even remotely in the ballpark for Top Esports to be able to win. The moment that Jackie Love got completely out of this game, got just completely demolished on the Kai'Sa, there was really no way for Top Esports to ever be able to come back and win this one. Once again, you're looking at a comp that does kind of need to control the pace of the game, but luckily for AL, they were able to do exactly that. What we're seeing so far as a trend through the first 2 games is that mid-game power spikes are actually really strong for both of these teams. If you're able to control the objectives, at least at a high level, you're probably able to control the pace of the game, and we can kind of talk about that with these 2 drafts. I think that they're definitely conflicting styles. I think you're specifically looking at an AL draft that really wants to win around a lot of these 3v3 or 4v4 objectives, going through the power of Xin Zhao and utilizing the playmaking of Rakan and Ryze to be able to create these odd-numbered opportunities that they can win on in the mid-game, but they don't necessarily have good team-fighting tools. In fact, they really don't have any good team-fighting tools. It's really just hoping and praying that Ryze gets super fed and can carry a lot of the late-game team fights if they do end up getting there. Luckily for them, they don't need to play that out here because they play their mid-game so well, but Top Esports is kind of the opposite. They have some things going for them in the early game. I like the Aatrox on R5. I like the Kai'Sa in general in this game. Aurora's probably not going to be super relevant, but you have a ton of split push options the later this game goes. Obviously, Jack's Aurora is very dangerous as a split push duo. Jack's coming out of the jungle means he might even be more accelerated than normal depending on how things go in the mid game, and Aatrox is going to be a problem in this one. The problem is they don't have any way to actually fight over a lot of these mid game objectives because a lot of these champions are just not good at all in the mid game, and once again, that's just kind of where we saw Top Esports falter in this one. 2 conflicting styles, 2 conflicting ideologies, but mid-game ends up winning out. Anyone's Legend ends up winning out, and the fact that they are able to control a lot of the pace of the game really is in their favor. Player of the game is pretty up in the air. I think that there are definitely quite a few options here. Flandre is going to get it from me. He also got it from the broadcast, but I don't feel like phenomenal about that. Like, I don't think it's definitely Flandre. Kale had a fantastic game here on the Rakan. I thought Hope was really good on the Varus. Shanks was doing a ridiculous amount of damage on the Ryze. Even if this is a very good Ryze game, and if Ryze has proven to be particularly strong in the LPL, he definitely has. In the LCK as well, like a lot of these eastern regions, Ryze just looks really good when piloted by good players and good teams, but Flandre was still very relevant. There were just a ton of options for AL to give player of the game to. The Gragas was really exceptional. I don't think he's in a particularly good matchup. The Aatrox on R5 is pretty solid for 369. He just wasn't able to actually generate control and pressure, which I think really held the team back in general. general, and Flandre's ability to really be precise with a lot of those ultimates is kind of what really tipped the scale in favor of AL. A lot of damage coming out from this Gragas, a lot more than maybe you would anticipate. Of course, he still was a problem to be able to take down in a lot of these skirmishes. He just was valuable. But if you wanted to give it to Kale on the Rakan because he was everywhere on the map and influencing basically every play in the game, I think that's fair. Hope was doing a ton of damage on the Varus, and let me tell you, Jackie Love had no hope of even competing to be equally as good in the AD carry role on the other side in this game. We will get to him a bit later. Shanks was awesome on the Rise, and like I said, this is a very good Rise game. Part of that leads me into believing, like, you know, I think a lot of mid laners would have had as good of a game as Shanks had here because this is a very solid Rise game overall, but Shanks still had to come out and pilot it, and he did exactly that, and Tarzan was good too. I'm mentioning him last because the Xin Zhao wasn't quite as noteworthy as a lot of the other champions in this game, but he still was incredibly valuable overall to the team's success. I just think AL looked a lot better in this game. They understood their win condition, and they were able to play off of the pressure they were able to generate. Again, everything you kind of want to see out of a top team. But for top esports on the other side, just a disaster in the bot lane. Basically nothing else to say. You can't blame anyone other than Jackie Love for this one. Dud of the game for game number 2. Absolutely abysmal stuff from him on the Kai'Sa, just not playing respectful and not playing safe at all. They have a ton of tools to be able to collapse on a, you know, a relatively low mobility AD carry in the Kai'Sa. You have Varus ultimate, obviously. If it lands, that's a problem. You can go behind them with Ryze ult. If Gragas ult catches you out, that's a problem. If Rakan ends up catching you out, that's a problem. There are just so many ways to take advantage of a champion like Kai'Sa in this game, and Jackie Love was not respectful enough. It's ironic because I do think his positioning was really elite on the Misfortune in the previous game. To see him show up on the Kai'Sa and just be way too overeager in game number 2, it's really not what you were looking for. Not that Crisp was like significantly better on the Alistar, but there's only so much you can do to save your AD carry when he's actively running it down in the game, and that's what Jackie Love was doing here. And then Kanavi ended up not being in a great spot on the Jax. He was doing a ton of damage, but he was taking way too many skirmishes. Again, top esports win condition is the later this game goes, the better it ends up getting for them. Not only do you have the Kai'Sa for a 5v5 team map, but you have so many ways to split push the map around Aatrox or Jax or Aurora and just play side lanes that, you know, you don't really want this game to go long if you're AL. Like, the top esports comp is scary, and I think Kanavi was honestly too aggressive in the early and in the mid game, taking too many trades and putting his team in too many bad positions, and it's just not really what you want to see from him. 369 got outplayed on the top side. Cream was fine, certainly wasn't the problem on the Aurora, but not really a great game execution-wise from Top Esports. I would say that AL's win in Game 2 was better than Top Esports' win in Game 1, but they equal the same. They mean the same thing. It's 1-1. Both teams are going to be going into Game number 3, hoping and praying to be able to pick up that victory, because as you know, I think Game 3 is the most important game of the series. Only having to win one of the final 2 games takes a lot of the pressure off of your shoulders and puts it on the enemy's shoulders. It's a really big burden to be relieved of, because it does mean that you can make mistakes. If you lose this game number 3, the mistakes have to be done. There is nothing left to give. You have to win every game from that point. So a massive game number 3 for both of these teams. Who's going to be able to take it? Well, the winner of game number 3 was Top Esports. They are going to take game number 3. They're going to take control of this series once again by going up 2-1. And honestly, I'm a bit surprised by this outcome, because walking out of draft, I did not think that this is going to be the end result of this game. I'm not saying that the Top Esports draft is bad or that they're in a really bad position to win. I'm certainly not saying that the AL draft is perfect, but I think both of these drafts kind of want to do the same thing, and yet I think you're kind of looking at multiple winning lanes for AL in terms of just individual matchups. If the Nocturne can get into a good position in this game, I do think it's very scary if the Camille gets online. I think it's actually kind of doomed for Top Esports, but Top Esports is able to survive. They're able to, you know, keep their wits about them. They're actually able to win early, and again, because these two team comps have basically the exact same win condition in terms of what they want to do or where their power spikes end up coming in, Top Esports end up just being able to gold diff their way to the shortest win of this entire series. But when we talk about draft, there are a couple of things that I'm really just not a huge fan of. I think Mbessa is finally starting to get countered a bit. I love things like Camille as a counter to Mbessa. I think they do really well at being able to just scale the game out and make it really difficult for her to be able to take over in the ways that she wants. I want to see more of things like Camille. Obviously, this game's not a particularly good example of that, but I think in theory, this ends up working out. Something like Nocturne, Galio, Lulu is very good to be able to enable the AD carry to pop off. Now, if this AD carry was a Zeri, or if it was, you know, a Sivir even, I'm not the biggest fan of that champion, any sort of hyper carry down in the bot lane, I would feel a ton better about this draft. A Smolder even down in the bot lane, I would feel a ton better about this draft if I was AL. But you draft Galio, you draft Lulu, you draft a lot of this protection, you draft a lot of this ability to play around some sort of late game out, and then you draft, but like you've drafted Ashe early on in the draft. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? You can't like enable and protect Ashe. That doesn't really become like a very viable way to win the game later on when the enemy team has a Xayah Sylas. And so I'm not really sure what the idea was there. I think at the end of the day, you're probably just trying to enable Camille Nocturne to be able to dive the enemy backline and blow them up before anything else can happen. But they have a Xayah, like the safest AD carry in the entire game. It just ends up being a win condition that you can't actually commit to in the way that you would want. I would really like Galio and Lulu and the Camille on the top side if you had something like a Zeri in the bot lane as the AD carry. As it is, you know, this draft kind of falls flat in my eyes. I think the Ashe ends up being a really big negative for AL overall, and Top Esports did kind of take advantage of that. But really, at the end of the day, even with the Ashe, this game really just came down to early game execution, because you are kind of in 3 winning lanes. Now, I don't think it's like a perfect 3 winning lanes or anything like that, but Ashe Lulu should have prio over Xayah Rel early. Galio definitely is going to shut down a lot of the tempo that Sylas wants to generate, and I already talked about how I think Camille is really good into Ambessa. Like, you should be in an okay spot to be able to get a gold lead, and you just didn't in this game because you played worse. Now, part of that's the jungle matchup, but at the end of the day, like, you should have been a lot better in this game if you were AL and you weren't. And a lot of that should go to the credit of Top Esports. I think there are 2 players in particular that were genuinely phenomenal in this one. Crisp is going to get player of the game for me on the Rel. He was everywhere on the map. Very similar to what we just talked about with Kale on the Rakan in game number 2, but I think this one was even better on the Rel, where he just was taking over every single fight, all of the engages, all of the flank angles. Like, this is Crisp at his best. I talk about this all the time on the channel, but Crisp has this reputation of being like an inter, and I get why he gets that, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that when things are going well for Crisp, he's the best support in the world. Like, his best games are as good as anybody else's in the entire world, and that's still the case. His creative flank angles are sometimes going to get him caught out in bad positions before a fight even starts, but when they work, like, he's getting 5-man ultimates more consistently than anybody else, and that's what you just see on a champion like Rel. He finds these angles, especially from ahead, where he can just absolutely decimate the enemy team, and he was just so active on the map. You got to give him a lot of credit in that regard. And the other player is Kanavi, who just had a great game on the Lee Sin. Again, another example of just being so ever-present across everywhere on the map, not really allowing Tarzan to be able to do anything on the Nocturne, because if he is going to go for some sort of exchange, Lee Sin is almost always going to be there, and that's just not going to go in favor of the Nocturne early. So big credit to Kanavi. I thought he played out these fights well. Cream and Jackie Love are great. 369 goes deathless on the Ambessa in a matchup that I don't think is Ambessa favored. Just overall, really good stuff from Top Esports. This was definitely an execution diff, even if I do think there were some things in draft that I think they could have done differently. And for AL, like, obviously I would have loved a Zeri or something like that in the bot lane, some sort of hyper carry to be able to enable, but if you were going to make as many mistakes as AL ended up making in this game number 3, it probably wouldn't have mattered in the end anyways. Just a lot of overreaches, a lot of plays that just were never going to develop in the way that they wanted, and they got in this gigantic gold deficit in a situation where you can't really afford to be getting in that big of a gold deficit. Now, a lot of this is on Tarzan. He's going to get dud of the game. This is probably the worst game he's played all winter, and that's very frustrating. Nocturne's not necessarily a champion, I would say, that fits his style. He likes to play aggro early. He obviously loves these skirmishes, and, you know, a champion like Nocturne who can find picks super easily is great, but playing Nocturne in the Lee Sin is kind of taking a lot of the onus off of Tarzan, and it means that if he is going to go for these aggressive plays, he probably can't do them by himself, and that's just not really the style that I think you should be going for. If you're AL, add that onto the fact that Hope and Kale lost in the bot lane in a matchup that kind of needed to win, and that Flandre lost in the top lane in a matchup that should have been really free for the Camille. You know, Shanks was fine, I guess, in the mid lane, but didn't really do anything, and everything just kind of collapsed around for AL. They really had no way to be able to salvage this game, but hopefully they're going to be able to stay alive, because they're now down 2-1 in this series. They've beaten Top Esports twice. They are undefeated in best of series over the course of this year. If they make it to the finals and can't get the job done, that's going to be so disappointing for this org that has tried so hard to be at the top of the LPL, but they got to win 2 in a row now, and that starts with game number 4. Can AL keep the series alive and keep their hopes of an undefeated split alive, or are Top Esports going to shut the door on that and pick up an LPL title in game 4? Well, the winner of game number 4 was Top Esports. They are going to take game number 4. They are going to take this series 3-1. And congratulations to TES because they are officially your 2025 LPL Winter Split champions. Top Esports has finally gotten over the hump. It feels like it's been forever since this team could actually achieve the goal of winning the league, of being at the top of the standings. But lo and behold, this team that we thought was a downgrade from last year, that we thought did get worse with the loss of Tion, with the loss of Mako, now they're sitting here as champions just a couple of months into the year in March. It's absolutely ridiculous the progress that this team has made, not only already in 2025, but just generally this organization has made in terms of scouting and bringing in talent that they think will make their team better. They were able to identify that a player like Cream could come in and be a replacement for, a lot of the high-profile, high-name players that they had let go. Someone like Knight had been so regular for this organization for so long. Rookie came in to replace him, but Cream was the one to find success on this team. Kanavi coming in to replace Tion. Kanavi was a worse Tion in 2024, and I think they had a lot of confidence and a lot of faith that they could get the better version of Kanavi back out. Crisp was kind of discarded by a lot of the community, not really thought of as a top-tier support. And all of these players were brought in, and now they're hoisting a trophy already at the beginning of this year. For AL, obviously, it's frustrating to be undefeated in Best of Series up until this point and not be able to seal the deal to make it count when it matters the most in the finals. But the progress that organization has made from what they've been the past couple of years already is incredible. And just because a couple of players didn't play particularly well today, which we will highlight, just because the team clearly wanted to opt into a more scaling identity in a do-or-die game number 4 when it had already been proven that those teams weren't working so far in this series. All of those things aside, it's still a big positive for AL to have been in this situation to begin with. So let's go ahead and talk about game number 4 before we talk about everything too in depth. Game number 4 was interesting because it really is just like a direct clash of ideologies. It's Top Esports picking Pantheon and Draven and Elise and saying, we're going to dominate the early game. We're going to try and snowball this out of control. And then AL saying, we're picking 2 tanks, Ornn and Maokai. We're picking 2 late game carries and Azir and Corki. And we're going to try to play front to back. We have some lanes that we could potentially win through. We're going to draft something like Karma to give us a way to stop the Elise early, but we don't really have a lot of agency. And unfortunately, they just kind of got punished pretty hard in that department. Top Esports doing a really good job of corralling the game early and getting Jackie Love the gold that he needed in order to take this game over, and that's really the player to highlight. Jackie Love is going to be not only my player of the game here for Game 4, but he's going to get my finals MVP for Top Esports. I do think it's pretty up in the air because Kanavi was excellent in this series. If you wanted to give it to Kanavi, I think that's fair. If you wanted to give it to Jackie Love, I think that's fair as well. I'm giving it to Jackie Love because I just felt like he was the most relevant in terms of their wins, but he did also get absolutely obliterated in their 1-game loss in this series, so it really is up to you. But the Draven on R5 was mega for Top Esports in this game. And I think the ability to play through that champion, the ability to play through the strength on the bottom side of the map is really what dictated a lot of the tempo of this game just in general. Jackie Love is obviously one of the best AD carries in the world, but specifically when you put him on things like Draven that can really control their own agency, as long as the team is playing for him and setting him up into a good position, like he's going to be able to take advantage of that and he's going to be able to dominate. And I'm just so happy to see Jackie Love back on top of the LPL. It's been so long since it's, been Jackie Love as like 1A in the LPL. I think the last time he won the LPL was probably 2019 spring. Somebody can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the last time he ended up winning the LPL. So to see that version of Jackie Love, who was still kind of like a young prodigy, was coming off of a Worlds win with Invictus Gaming, he was basically in year 2 of his pro career, to see like a veteran version now in 2025 be able to step up and really carry the team when they need him the most is ginormous. But Crisp was excellent here. Talked about his game number 3 and how good that was. Elise support has been a death sentence for a majority of supports across the world, but he was really, really valuable on that champ. Now, obviously, there still are some flaws that come with Elise just naturally, and you compound that with Crisp's playstyle. It's not always going to be the most clean thing in the world, but still a really good game and a really great series from him. Kanavi was, like I said, the other player that I really considered for player of the series for finals MVP. He just gapped Tarzan in the finals, and he needed to do that. We talked about how the jungle matchup was going to be super key and super crucial to who came out on top here. I thought both junglers were going to perform well. That was not the case. Kanavi was definitely the better of these two junglers, and that's really a big reason why Top Esports was able to get over the hump. And then Cream and 369 were also excellent. The fact that they were the two that were probably the most influential throughout the playoff run, and they were also the two that didn't need to do the most in the finals finals is a really, really good sign for Top Esports as they go to an international tournament now. So overall, really awesome stuff from TES. Really, really cool to see them be able to hoist the LPL trophy and get their rematch and their revenge against an Anyone's Legend team who I just said it's so close, so close. He came so close to finally being, LPL champions. This organization has put in so much time and so many resources into trying to be the top of the league, and it finally feels like they have a roster that's coming so close, but they just barely are not able to get over that hump. They just had a couple of unfortunate plays, we'll just say, throughout the series that really ended up costing them. Tarzan's going to get dead of the game for Game 4. He did the same thing in Game number 3. Tarzan just got out-jungled by Kanavi in this series. There's not even really all that much to debate on that front. I think Flandre was fine on the top side, but he kind of needed to be better. My mind goes back to that Camille game where he just had so much potential to be able to take over, and there were just ways that he could have optimized the game a bit more. I think 369 was definitely the better top laner here. Hope and Kale weren't atrocious, but Jackie Love and Crisp were definitely the better of the bot lanes here, and Shanks was fine. He wasn't the problem, but he also wasn't the solution. He B1 to Zir, which, as you guys know, I talk about a lot on this channel. It just opens up the possibility for the enemy team to run the mid game, and that's exactly what happened. We talked about it throughout the entirety of the first couple games of this series. Whoever had control of the mid game in draft ended up winning all 4 games of this series, and to see AL see that trend and notice that and still draft Maokai, Azir, Corki, Ornn, like, it's frustrating because you really shouldn't be falling into that trap over and over again, but hopefully they can learn from this. Hopefully they can grow from this moving forward, because I still think AL can be a title contender moving forward. Unfortunately for them, it just wasn't their time. It wasn't meant to be here in Winter Split, we'll just say. Spring could definitely be better. I still think this team, like I said, is going to be a threat for basically the rest of the year, but there are some things that need to clean up. Tarzan, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. A 3rd straight 2nd place finish for Tarzan in the Winter Split here, but congratulations again to Top Esports. They are the champions of the LPL. They are representing the region at the First Stand tournament, and honestly, I couldn't possibly see a team that deserves it more after this series. All right, but that is going to do it for my LPL Winter Split 2025 overview and analysis of the finals. Top Esports are your 2025 LPL Winter Split champions. You can see that up on your screen. 369, Kanavi, Cream, Jackie Love, and Crisp. Of course, Home, the coach here, brought in, familiarity with 369 and Kanavi. Those 3 as a trio have never lost an LPL split, and that includes 2025 now. Absolutely ridiculous, the resume that they have, but they will be the representative from the LPL at the First Stand tournament as well. And they did it in such consistent fashion. You can see in this meme, they take down IG 3-1, they take down Ninjas in Pajamas 3-1, they take down BLG 3-1, they take down JD Gaming 3-1, they take down AL 3-1. The absolute consistency of this team to be able to overcome basically any challenge that they were thrown, it's ridiculous, and honestly, you just have to give them a ton of credit. When you look at the lineup itself, like, Cream overcame a ridiculous amount in this playoff run. Like, this is a cavalcade of the best mid laners in LPL history, or in the LPL right now. He went through Rookie, he went through Doenby, he went through Knight, he went through Scout, and he went through Shanks. Like, these are the legendary mid laners of the LPL, and Cream came out on top. Jackie Love was able to really step it up and dominate in the playoffs when his team needed him most. Crisp was awesome in this playoff run. 369 and Kanavi are arguably the best in their role in the entire region. It just looks great. Congratulations again to Top Esports, and they're going to be the representative from the LPL at First Stand. You can see it up on the screen here. We've covered 3 of the finals. We have not yet covered the LEC finals on this channel. That video is going to be coming out tomorrow, and so I know the finals have already happened. We know what team is going to be there, but I haven't covered it, and so it's not in the graphic just yet. We'll preview that tomorrow in the LEC video, but we do know 4 teams. We can talk about 4 teams here at First Stand. Hanwha Life and Team Liquid, of course, qualifying last week from the LCK and the LTA, respectively. Top Esports joins them alongside the CTBC Flying Oysters from APAC, so really exciting stuff. I think Top Esports is honestly looking really good going into this tournament. HLE are Game 5 merchants, and that can be very dangerous to run into, but it's definitely going to be between Hanwha Life and Top Esports who's going to be favorited. I'm really intrigued to see how Kanavi ends up doing at the tournament. If Kanavi and Jackie Love are going to be able to pop off like they did domestically, there is a real argument that they are the best team at the tournament. I think when you look at consistency, they've been more consistent than any other team at First Stand, so there's a real shot, I think, that they can walk out of that tournament with a victory, the first one in quite a while for the the LPL, but that's just my personal prediction. Let me know, do you think that Top Esports has a chance to be the #1 team or should be considered to be the #1 team going to first stand, or do you think they should be ranked below a team like Hanwha Life, below the LEC rep, below even like Team Liquid if everything were to, go wrong for them? Let me know where you think Top Esports ends up standing in the grand scheme of things at first stand, but that's going to do it. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. It really does mean a lot to me. It lets me know you guys are enjoying the content, and it does help get this video out to a lot more people, which I'm always very appreciative of. If you're new here, hit subscribe. Like I said, we'll be covering the LEC finals tomorrow on this channel, and then it's all first stand from here on out. The first international tournament of the year is right around the corner. We'll be covering every game of that tournament. We'll be previewing it before it happens and going through everything that happens the entire week that thing is running. So if you're interested in that, hit subscribe and hit that bell so you can be notified when those videos do go live. But with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. Hope you continue to have a great day. And I will see you all